Good evening and welcome to News Review. Gibraltar has been excluded from the new European Single Sky legislation following a majority vote in the European Parliament this week. The Foreign Office expressed its disappointment at the decision and said the UK would continue to press for Gibraltar's inclusion in all EU aviation legislation.
355 MEPs from across Europe today voted in favour of Gibraltar's exclusion, with only 260 against. The amendments introduced by Spanish Partido Popular MEPs mean Gibraltar's airport has now been excluded from the safety and regulation measures it's been part of since the Córdoba Agreement in 2006. The European Single Sky legislation coordinates air traffic control around Europe, and exclusion from it could affect Gibraltar's ability to liaise with facilities in nearby airports. The government says it regrets the decision taken by the European Parliament, adding that it's wrong and totally unacceptable for a part of the European Union to be suspended from the application of EU law in this way. The opposition has also condemned the vote, claiming it says more about political expediency than the concern of the European Parliament for people, and adding that the UK needs to do all it can to ensure that the European Council does not approve similar changes. The government has thanked those from different political groups who supported Gibraltar, including South West Liberal Democrat MEP Sir Graham Watson, who campaigned yesterday by writing to MEPs. Sir Graham said the result of the vote was disappointing, adding that the departure of the UK Conservatives from the Europe-wide People's Party group has affected their ability to campaign and lobby on behalf of Gibraltar. The UK now has the option of lobbying the European Union Council to reverse this decision and reintroduce the Córdoba Agreement into the legislation. A spokesperson for the Foreign Office has said the UK cannot accept a return to the pre-2006 practice of suspending Gibraltar's airport from EU aviation measures. The Foreign Office says the decision is inconsistent with the approach taken only a few weeks ago, when the UK correctly amended legislation on air passenger rights to apply to Gibraltar. It says it's made its position clear to the Spanish government and the European Commission and will continue to press for Gibraltar's inclusion when the issue is next considered by the Council.
The European People's Party, which voted in favour of the amendments to the Commission's proposals, is the largest single bloc consisting of 274 members. The Partido Popular, who proposed the legislative changes, managed to turn the clock back to pre-Córdoba. Christine Vasquez spoke to Deputy Chief Minister Dr. Joseph Garcia and put it to him that this was not the first time Europe had not included the language of Córdoba.
Well, what's happening is when they're amending an existing legislation, this is what this is, it's a tweaking, the measure they're amending is from before Córdoba and it contains the exclusion clause. Then the Commission puts it forward again with the exclusion clause in it. When they're amending a measure which is post-2006 and it includes the Córdoba language, which applies to Gibraltar, then the Commission puts it forward with the Córdoba language in it, which is what's happened in this particular occasion. You may recall recently, last month, the Parliament voted on the Air Passenger Rights Directive. There the reverse happened. The Commission put it forward with the exclusion clause in it, and the Parliament voted to take it out. Now they've done the opposite. It's come with no exclusion, and they voted to put the suspension clause back in. So really, it shows you the anomalous mess that Spain has created in Europe and the difficulties they're creating for the whole of the European Union because of the obsession of the present Spanish government with dismantling the Córdoba Agreement and because they turned their backs on the trilateral forum.
Well, obvious political repercussions, but if you'll excuse the pun, what are the repercussions on the ground?
Well, the repercussions, if you excuse my pun, will be in the air, not in the ground. But essentially, it'll mean that the way in which Gibraltar communicates with air traffic control at Seville will be different, and I'm told that it could have serious repercussions in the future. So that is the position on this one. But obviously, there's also a fundamental point of law, which is that how can they choose to exclude a part of the European Union in this way from the application of European Union law when this should apply automatically as of right? And obviously, this was never tested in court because, again, it was thrown out on a technicality way back in the 1980s or early 90s. But there are fundamental principles, and I think it's important to show up what Spain has done, because really this has been instigated purely and simply by the Partido Popular, and to show that the workings of the whole European Union in certain respects is being held to ransom by the actions of the Spanish government.
So is that it then? We're out?
Well, now what happens is indeed what happened with the air passenger rights legislation, where we won the vote. Both these measures now go forward to the Council. The Council are the 28...
Foreign Office Minister Baroness Varsi this week told the House of Lords it is difficult to see Britain's relationship with Spain remaining excellent if the bullying and harassment of Gibraltarians continues. She also vowed to look into claims that Spain would be prosecuting and fining any ships bunkering in Gibraltar, and said ministerial visits to Gibraltar would continue in future.
Some of the ROC's staunchest supporters in the House of Lords rallied to the ROC's defence during a one-hour debate. But they were unable to extract much commitment from Foreign Office Minister Baroness Varsi beyond a repetition of the standard Foreign Office line. We'll protect the sovereignty of Gibraltar, and we won't enter into negotiations over sovereignty. She was, however, cornered into accepting that the UK's relationship with Spain could not remain excellent, as Spanish politicians have described it, if the unjustified actions at the frontier and at sea continued. In her opening speech, Baroness Butler-Sloss, who's been visiting Gibraltar for over 60 years and was here for the National Day celebrations last year, said it was only fitting that on Commonwealth Day the Lords should discuss a valued member of the Commonwealth. She asked what the UK government felt it had achieved with its diplomacy when there have already been 77 incursions into British waters this year, and queues at the border continue to disrupt business, tourism and cross-border workers.
I understood the British policy over Gibraltar is to maintain the status quo. The word de-escalate means to me a degree of stepping back, and may be so understood by Spain. There appears to be no let-up as a result of the diplomatic and political efforts of the United Kingdom government.
She said a visit by a UK minister would send a message to Spain that Gibraltar was taken seriously and was high on the UK government's agenda. Lord Hoyle said it would be an absolute disaster if the new gaming bill were to damage the ROC's economy, given the fact that Gibraltar is now the world leader in this sector. He urged the government to explain what it's actually doing to counteract illegal incursions, and warned that sooner or later lives would be lost as a result of Spanish actions. Former Governor Lord Luce said cross-border relations were at their worst since the days of General Franco, and the generation of hatred towards Gibraltarians in Andalusia was more akin to a Francoist government than a democratic one.
I believe that relations between the Spanish government and Gibraltar and our country are worse than at any time since the time when Franco was in power. And that is damaging to our relations with Spain. And it's in sharp contrast to the last Spanish government that had a very sensible policy about regional cooperation in that area.
Baroness Hooper said it was perverse for Spain to be antagonizing Gibraltarians instead of trying to win their hearts and minds.
The present impasse on the border is a sad, unnecessary and incomprehensible state of affairs, and it's gone on for far too long. I can only hope that the patience of the good people of Gibraltar will last. I have a feeling that it will, and that they'll continue to prosper in spite of it.
In reply, Baroness Varsi said the UK government had taken robust action following Spanish provocation, including the summoning of the Spanish ambassador on a number of occasions, complaints by British ministers to their Spanish counterparts, and the registering of every illegal incursion as a complaint to Madrid.
But I think, as the noble Baroness, as a front bench opposite, has also said, Spain is, of course, still a valued partner in both NATO and the EU, and it is in the interest of both our countries, and indeed in the interest of Gibraltar, for that cooperation to continue. Spain says that it has an excellent relationship with the UK, however, it's difficult to see how Spain's escalation of the dispute over Gibraltar is not going to impact on that wider bilateral relationship. That is a point that we have made to them on numerous occasions, and will continue to pursue solutions at this stage through political and diplomatic means. But there should be no doubt of our commitment to the people of Gibraltar. Their wishes and their rights are paramount, and we will continue to stand up for them.
Prompted again by Baroness Butler-Sloss on the issue of bunkering, she said she would investigate the claim that the port of Algeciras is threatening to prosecute and fine any ships which bunker in Gibraltar.
The Environmental Safety Group considers Europa Point to be a far from ideal location for the new football stadium. It believes the stadium would radically transform an open, peaceful area important for both tourism and the local community. This brutal conversion can't, in its view, be softened by any redesign. The ESG says it agrees with the Heritage Trust and many voices in our community that another site must be found.
The Environmental Safety Group says that apart from the impact on the landscape at Europa, the matter of mobilising thousands of people to and from the border using our already busy roads raises serious concerns. It believes several key roads would need to be closed for long periods on match days, and the pollution created by the large number of diesel buses would be problematic. This, as a group, added to an unpredictable border, creates important issues that will have a major bearing on whether the logistics, however well planned, are executable. The ESG is also concerned about the stadium's carbon footprint during construction and once operational. It says water consumption alone will be significant, especially if real grass is to be used. The group urges that rainwater collection and renewable energy technology is built into the basic design to meet the stadium's energy requirements and offset part of its footprint. The ESG highlights that Europa Point will also see a sewage treatment plant built near the mosque, and that it's bound to produce some smell. And it adds the 2 GSM antennae currently placed near the lighthouse could potentially cause health and safety concerns. Another issue it raises is how a large stadium will impact on the special coastal area contained within the UNESCO bid, which includes Gorham's Cave. Finally, the ESG believes the heavy weather conditions at Europa Point are influencing the design of the proposed stadium, as well as the materials that can be used. The winds in the area, it claims, will mean that littering associated with large-scale events will pose a significant environmental hazard by way of lightweight rubbish being blown into the sea. The Environmental Safety Group hopes the East Side reclamation will be given the utmost consideration as an alternative venue. It also hopes the government, as landlords, will respond to the many concerns and agree to offer the GFA another site.
Meanwhile, in light of recent criticism from the Heritage Trust and the Environmental Safety Group, as well as the growing debate on the new GFA stadium, GSD leader Daniel Feetham told GBC the site chosen is not ideal from either an environmental nor a heritage point of view. However, Mr. Feetham says the party will reserve judgment on the debate until he hears answers to his questions in Parliament as to what alternative sites were considered.
Well, I've already expressed the view that I am not too enamoured with the design for the new stadium. But I think the more important issue is really the location. This is an iconic location for Gibraltar. I mean, it's important from a cultural, from a heritage point of view, from an environmental point of view. A number of years ago, when the GSD built a park in the area, it was condemned, it was criticised by GONS because of the impact on the environment. So it's important from an environmental point of view too. Before the GSD really takes a position as a party, I want to know more information about what other locations are available for the UEFA Stadium. Because you see, whatever reservations we may have about this location, if it's the only location on which you can cite a UEFA Stadium, then Gibraltar needs to make a decision whether it wants UEFA football or it doesn't want UEFA football. But at the moment, I think that we don't have enough information about what other locations are available, how viable those locations might actually be. So I've drafted a question, I've submitted a question for next week in Parliament, and we'll see what information the government provides, and then we'll make a decision in the light of that.
And we'll be back with more of this week's news after the break.